First up is 7.1 Technology 1.1 or 1-to-1 refresh update. Dr. Smizer.
Yes, we have Kate Canine, Professional Development Director, and the Director of IT Infrastructure and Tech Services, Dan Stark. And they will present information to you and engage in a dialogue with you about what we're doing with Technology Refresh. I think some of the things we've been talking about the last few years about switching up what we do and some of the problem solving that you'll see in our plan going forward is commendable. And I feel like this is a turning of a page into a new way of doing things. So thank you very much for all your work.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Smizer. Good evening, board, cabinet, colleagues, future Lobo colleagues. Love it. Thanks for being here. As Dr. Smizer said, my name is Kate Canine. I'm the Director of Professional Development. And really, my role tonight is to update you on a few things and just set context for the discussion. Dan Stark, Director of IT Infrastructure and Technical Services, is also here to answer questions that may arise. And really, we're representing the Tech Steering Committee that is made up of other folks as well as some assistant principals from our buildings as well to provide that school voice. So for tonight, really three pieces to this particular puzzle. And I have to be honest with you, I was sitting there thinking, okay, what's a clever way that I can tie the literacy adoption to the Futures Lab to tech? I got nothing clever, but it does connect. It definitely ties, because when you think about in both of those areas how important technology can be to leverage experiences for our students and for our future colleagues out there. So what I'd like to do is quickly run through and preview for you what the purchases are going to, what that's shaping up to look like for 2019-2020, so next school year. Then provide more context to the choice model, so some of the changes that we're looking to make in our tech refresh model because of feedback the last couple years. And then end with some examples and showcase some stories of how, just a few examples of how technology is being leveraged across our classrooms. Okay, so that's our plan. So for 2019-2020, really under the same model that we have been for a while. So student devices will be refreshed. Our incoming third graders, sixth graders, and ninth graders will be refreshed, as well as our staff devices. So staff devices will be refreshed. An interesting feature that we've been able to explore and test, and we're feeling confident, is that a feature of the staff devices will be that they will be a flip to tablet and a touchscreen device. Along with refreshing just the actual device is also all the docking stations that come with it to make sure that those teacher devices still hook up and connect and are compatible with everything that hooks into them currently, as well as possibly down the road if they're looking for different classroom displays and those sorts of things. So that, the details of that purchase, Dustin, Dan, and team will bring forth to the board. Our timeline right now is April for that approval of that purchase. So that's next school year. Beyond, so we continue to try to push ourselves and really figure out how are we leveraging all of our tools, but in particular the technology tools for our students. It really is a tremendous privilege that the community supports us so that we even have a one-to-one model. We have access to so many tools and software and devices. So we want to make sure that we're asking ourselves, how are all of those tools and that investment increasing student agency, creativity, and collaboration? Is it truly positioning us and putting us in a place that we can create the conditions for student innovation, school innovation, across school innovation, make sure that we can keep advancing for the sake of our students? So the two major adjustments that we're going to make in our refresh model, the first one is that for the past, 10 years or so, not quite 10 years, is that we have deployed devices to about a fourth of our students, in particular third graders, sixth graders, ninth graders. The new model we will shift to deploying to a fourth of our schools, and they'll be on a 4-year refresh cycle. So that way a whole school can really start to analyze, where are we with technology? How are we using it? How is it enhancing learning? What else could we be doing? Explore other, other options, and as a whole school, be refreshed at a time instead of maybe waiting for all of the students to have a similar device. The other piece with that then that ties in and why we want to go by school is we'd like to provide some more choice to our schools in the device that they choose. We have, we go through a whole process to gather input, make decisions about the instructional need as well as the budget to what device is, ultimately purchased and provided. We want to open that up and allow some choice for schools so they can decide for all the students in the school what device would best help them meet their current needs, as well as advance to what they might want to continue to expand and innovate with. And I'll show you those choices here in a minute, but again, kudos to Dan and his team. We would never put a choice on that menu if it wouldn't be compatible with everything that we have, work in our infrastructure, meet minimum online standardized testing requirements, all those things. So doing a lot of exploration to make sure that the devices we know of right now that would be viable options truly do meet our needs. All right, so with that, and my tech friends out there are probably cringing because I haven't gotten a shortened URL yet. I just didn't get it done. So I'm going to pop out of this and go to a site that we've built to try to house all this information and run through a few more things there, and then we'll get to the student stories here at the end. So on our site, there's right now we have 4 pages in the upper right corner there. The home page is intended to describe the choice model and the changes that we're looking to make. We will make this more available right now, link it to other sites and things so the community and others can dig into this site. So explaining those 2 main changes that we're making. Then you can see our transition order. And something I'm going to stay here for just a minute. Something I'd like to point out with the transition order is once we start to kick this into effect in 2020, 2021, during transition, we're going to be running 2 paths, if you will. The schools in this order will be going through the choice model, analyzing their practices, making a decision about their device. But meanwhile, we need to refresh everybody else. So the Rocky Feeder and those choice schools, as they get new devices, their current devices will then feed our fleet to still be able to refresh for 3rd graders, 6th graders, and 9th graders in those other schools. As well as that's how our new buildings will start out. They'll take from the, I don't want to say used, but they are. They're going to be used, but they'll be refreshed and they'll work and all that good stuff. So everyone throughout this transition will be provided with a device that's under warranty. It just won't necessarily be brand new. Okay. So that, and again, thank you to Tyson and Dan and team to figure out, just based on numbers, how to make that work. The other thing that I want to pause and share is that during this transition and this time, we're going to continue to strive for and grapple with and figure out how do we continue to provide access and opportunity for all students. Because this model gives us a chance to really concentrate efforts with a 1/4 of the schools to really dig in and have conversations and do trainings with them. But it's not, we can't ignore everyone else until it's your turn. So any trainings that we do, they're going to be open. We're going to make sure that if we have opportunities at Summer Institute, it's not just going to be for the schools that are coming up in rotation. It's open to all. We try to make sure that all of our trainings, we'll continue to offer our tech-specific trainings, but all of our trainings, regardless of the topic, how are we embedding and modeling technology and how you can leverage that in instruction. We will continue throughout this to provide our pro accounts for software. So if there's software out there that a teacher wants and they want the higher level to do more with it, they can come to us and say, yes, I want to do that. And it comes with a few agreements that they'll use it so often and share it with other people and such. But we'll continue that. We do have digital tools in our catalog that can be checked out by schools. So when you start to think about how do we provide access and opportunity for students beyond this guy, but all the stuff that can plug into this guy or that can be made with this guy or gal, we want to make, what are those opportunities? And we feel like we have some already in place, looking to perhaps expand upon that. Looking to other districts that have some models where there's kind of a base, what everyone does get with the devices, but then beyond that, how can we help support schools so that they can get additional tools, whether that maybe be through some internal grants for some tools. And when I say tools, I'm talking robots, virtual reality kits, 3D printers, because many of our schools already have these, some don't. So how do we provide that opportunity and access for students shared with the school? Because frankly, we also need to work within a budget, so we don't just have. And it's important to say that when we think about opportunity and access, there's the stuff, but I would argue there's also how do you provide the stuff for the adults so that they're using it in authentic and meaningful ways. So it's not just that you have stuff, but you're using it really well for the students to enhance their experience. So that's something, again, we continue to grapple with and explore and work with schools where they are, what they could be doing, and how can we get there. Sorry, I spent a little more time there than I had planned to. Below that on our site are right now the devices that we're exploring. I do want to stress that we are still exploring that through the spring, again, to make sure that they meet our needs. And with this model positioning us for the future, in 4 years, maybe even 2 years, this can change. As new devices come out, there may be different things up here when we come back to you in 2 years to update you. That's exciting to me to know that we can keep moving forward. We also have some impact indicators, things that we will be looking towards to see how this is going, how this change is going. It's a mix, just like when we're looking at what's the impact of a literacy adoption in our curriculum materials to social emotional strategies for all students. How do you know if it's working? We're looking at a mix of both teacher self-perception data, how do they think it's going, working with schools to set goals and reflect on are they meeting those goals, and ultimately we will be looking towards associations with outcomes, whether that's academic outcomes, connections survey information. We'll be able to associate the technology use that's happening and what connections and associations we might be able to make. Let's see. Also, I'm going to jump around on our pages here. The engagement phases. We want to work with the schools under the choice model a full 1.5 years before they get the new devices in their hands. So the Rocky Feeder and the choice schools, we're starting to work with them as soon as next week. To have them come in and start talking about what they're doing, sharing across. We have volunteers. We've got a couple of folks from different schools going down to visit another district to see classrooms in action with some different devices, as well as we've had some offers internally to go see each other. So looking to interact with the schools, again, 1.5 years in advance. They will make decisions in December the year prior, so we can then make sure that we follow all the procurement processes and things that we need in order to have the device to them that following school year. So this page, I'm not going to go all the way through it, but it explains the timeline, makes it more specific for the first group that goes through, and then a description of some of the activities that we're thinking about. This work is also, it's very collaborative and it needs to be done in a partnership with the schools because it is change. For some, it may not be a very big change. It could be a big change, but it also is going to impact schools at different times. So some of them, it won't impact them for 3 years. So it's the old adage that, that planning is more important than plans. So we're trying to put a lot of planning into it, but working with the schools to say what will work for you and how can we make this meaningful, and it's, you're making those decisions. It's not something we're doing to you. We have a page that continues to grow of frequently asked questions. I think I even made a change and added some more information to this morning. So there's quite a bit there because through conversations we've had a lot of questions and hopefully some good responses. So as we get into discussion, I might point back to some of these to just help point out that some of it we have available here, and then hopefully some questions I might be adding to it after tonight. Okay. So let me end on, if you don't mind, I would like to end by showcasing a few examples of how we're leveraging technology. And the way that I want to do this tonight, but it also ties into how we're going to be working with the schools, is by framing it under the T3 framework. The T3 framework from Sunny Magana really talks about how can we analyze the manner in which we're utilizing technology for the student experience. And there's 3 domains. In the translate domain, how do you make decisions both as an instructor, but as also even as a learner? And are you wanting an experience to be translated from analog to digital? When would you? When might you not want to do that? So it may be something as, when do I need to hand write something or draw it, or when can I go straight to digital? As well as how are we consuming? You know, the question earlier about some of the literacy materials being online. We have the chance now, some of our curricular materials, yes, they're online, but they also have videos. And our students going to blogs or other places to look for opinions and information and other research. Transforming in that domain, we're still translating, using technology to translate, but it really comes down to why are you doing it? Are you doing those things because your teacher asked you to? Or are you doing them to produce for a peer so that someone else in your class can look at what your thinking was and analyze it? Or are you producing so that another class or another school or a broader audience can look at your work and be informed by your work? So producing and contributing in that domain. Ultimately, what we'd like to see more of for our students is how is the technology being leveraged to really provide experiences that transcend for them. So they are, in this, it comes down to what do you care about? What's your voice and choice in the work? Do you have a wicked problem that you're trying to solve? And you're coming up with some inquiry design to decide, oh, I need this technology, or no, I'm not going to use technology. I'm going to use, I need to just create with clay over here first. They're deciding those things and creating those experiences to influence the world in a better way. So, enough. That way too much of me talking. So, what we've got on the site, I apologize for leaning over here, is using those 3 domains. We just, over the last just couple weeks here, have grabbed some examples to show you. There's the interactive presentation. It's a software that basically takes a PowerPoint and makes it more interactive. So it's let alone the fact that it's not just the teacher talking, there's visuals to go with it, but then it allows students to interact, and so there's an example of a prompt as well as what the student sees. We also have many of our students at all levels using video to explain their thinking. So here are 2 students.
Hello. Today I'm going to be reflecting on my waterproof roof challenge with my partner Kelsey. So, how did we go about choosing our roof materials? Well,
so I'm going to pause it there. So they go on to explain how they chose their roofing. And so it's just an opportunity, instead of just presenting and that's done and over, it's captured. Peers can view it. Peers can give feedback, and it can actually be securely shared with family members, etc. We also have just the availability out there right now as a math person. Oh my goodness. Creating a table, plotting points. No, there's not need for that. It's the technology now. There's so many free softwares out there that help you manipulate and interact with the graph right there. So, a couple of examples there. Under the transforming, with students producing and contributing, the first example that we have there is it's just a screencast of a digital portfolio for art. So one of our students, you can just scroll through and see his art over time, as well as there's a video of him explaining one of his pieces of art. There's also, we have many of our schools, they do their own news. And so they're recording that. They're using green screen, other tools to produce news. This one I am going to click on. It's a middle school science motion graph example.
I was driving down the street at a constant rate. Then I decided to stop and park.
Then I parked by the stop sign. Then I walked backwards away from my car.
I accelerated to my favorite store.
So, and actually, I have to tell you, the reason I did want to pause on that one is just saw the teacher over at our tech leaders cohort, and she told me that right after they did this, that she actually used an app where the students went and they had a bunch of different yard games, you know, like plastic horseshoes and bowling and such, and there's an app where you can actually record that activity happening and it graphs it for you. So they learned about the various graphs, went and recorded an actual event happening. It created graphs for them. Then they put it back into the context to be able to describe it. There's a high school physics one here. I pulled this one from Twitter. And the reason, it's kind of cool, the student herself, that's my video. So the student found that the teacher had highlighted it on Twitter. And it's all about Newton's law and, did this change on me? No.
Reaction.
Every action has an equal opposite reaction.
I have done a lot of research on how to explain Newton's 3 laws in figure skating, and I found that the easiest way to do so is to explain to you all how stroking and stopping work.
So student took Newton's law, took a passion of skating, and put those together and created a video to be able to share to others for that. And now, hopefully, others have seen that, like, now I can connect to this in a different way. Then the last one I want to showcase is really about an experience where students had voice and choice in the work that they were doing in class. So I'm just going to go to their site and show part of their documentary because I'm not going to do it justice. So this is from one of our high schools, Album for Civic Engagement. They created this entire site. There's lots to explore there on the documentary. Let's just watch this for a moment.
Inside the walls of this school lies a classroom. And inside the walls of this classroom lies a story. A story about a project to make a difference. A difference in our schools, and a difference in our community. This is the Album for Civic Engagement. The process all started with establishing our goal. We wanted to raise awareness about important nonprofits and their causes by involving students in the community through the powerful medium of music. Once we had the vision, we got to work. 6 committees were formed, each in charge of a crucial element to the project's success. Project managers took the lead in coordinating our processes to ultimately reach our goal. Event planners secured a space for us to unite the community and share our message. Publicists and marketers ensured that we had online presence and made our voice heard. Artists created engaging posters to advertise our events and manifested the messages of our songs into album art. Sound engineers researched and purchased professional recording equipment to ensure that our products were top quality, and documentarians captured the whole process. In addition to committees, bands were formed to represent a nonprofit of their choice and ultimately create a song. Intensive research was done by each band to ultimately arrive at a nonprofit that they wanted to partner with for the project. Each student then wrote an op-ed piece about their nonprofit and an important cause that they support. This was the first stage of representation and civic engagement. The second stage that followed was even bigger. As a class, everyone played their respective roles in planning a symposium for the nonprofits to attend. The goal was to spread the word about each nonprofit and connect all Fossil students directly with opportunities for volunteering and community involvement. Students in the class were given exposure to the world of business communications, learning how to write and deliver formal business letters and conduct themselves professionally. Once the day finally came, the symposium was a massive success.
There's more, but I'm going to pause it there. So And so throughout this, again, tried to capture and showcase a few examples that we are seeing across multiple schools. And looking to, we were just talking again with tech leaders and other groups, how can we even build out a whole nother page to share case and show stories of things that are happening? Because the minute you start asking teachers about some of these experiences for students, they just keep sharing and keep coming up. And the validation of like, that is so neat that you're having students interact that way. Sometimes I don't think teachers realize the power in what they are doing every single day, whether it is heavy technology or light technology. And it's also, we like this particular framework because students at any age can be operating in any of these domains, and it's also whichever technology they're using, it fits. And ultimately, as you go into the transformation and transcending domain, they're making the decision about what technology would help them. And they're teaching us, too, about what we should be using. So that is all that I had to share. Questions, comments, discussion as I switch this out.
Great. So thanks for that. It looks like you're moving onto that exponential curve where it's starting to push upwards real fast, it sounds like. So
we're trying to keep up with our teachers and students.
It's really cool. So first question out of Naomi.
Hi. I really like the device choice menu, but I do have a concern about the cost aspect of it. A Chromebook is significantly less expensive than a Windows laptop or an iPad. Likewise, a Chromebook or even a Windows laptop for teachers is significantly less expensive than an Apple product. So what is the advantage of offering the more expensive options to the entire school as opposed to saying, if you need an Apple product or a Windows product, we'll have a smaller, perhaps like checkout bay or computer lab or something to that effect?
So wondering about there's definite difference in prices and cost of those devices. So your question is, why would we want to go there with large numbers?
Yes, because I guess I'm looking at this and I'm thinking I read in the frequently asked question area, the school isn't going to get any money back for selecting a less expensive option. So like the longevity of this, if all of the schools end up selecting the more expensive option, then that's over time going to be less technology available as opposed to the less expensive option. We would be able to provide Chromebooks for everyone.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, and that's something that we have grappled with, and I am going to, if Dan or Dustin or even Dave want to chime in, looking at some modeling and working with budget, within our budget, to what is kind of the middle ground, if you will, and how we adjust up or down, but I'll let...
Sure. Good evening. Thank you for letting me help Kate out with this one. The cost per model is not as drastic as you would think. The model for the Apple option would be for a teacher. It would be a MacBook Air, which is almost equivalent to what the Windows-based device would be for a teacher as well, on the cost apples to apples. The Chromebooks are the cheapest by far, but also a Chromebook versus what the current student Windows-based laptop is in third grade is not that big of a difference. So overall, the numbers look like there would be no cost difference unless we exceeded change above about a 40% rate, which is not what we expect. We expect, although we're offering the option, that most people, we expect to stay the same. In preliminary conversations, I think that's fair. The options are there. But as you know, there's an inertia to making a decision, and so far, the current conversations, we currently don't expect massive change. So we've run scenario and stress tests through budget spreadsheets, and we don't believe there's going to be a very large, if any, financial impact, and could be a financial benefit going forward with the addition of more Chromebooks. So I think, obviously, Apple is seen as a luxury device, but the version that we're offering to teachers is almost the same price as the Windows laptop.
Other questions? Kristen?
So what happens when you've got a high school that, they choose iPads, for instance, and but for a specific art class or photography class, they need a Windows-based device for Photoshop, or something to that effect. What happens then?
So once school makes the decision, they have their device, and there's something, a specific subset that needs something different, how will we address that and provide? That is actually a couple things. One is we hope that that's part of the upfront conversations with the school. So we actually have, now I forget what we called it, impact analysis, I think, was what we called it, is kind of a list of guiding questions to say, okay, if you're going to make a change to some of these other devices, what's the experience going to be for online testing? What about your specialized classes? Will they work or not? And ask the schools to do that analysis. And we may look towards, we do have some of our labs in our schools that have the more powerful desktop machines that can run the higher end software. So it'd just be a conversation, is that going to meet the need? Yes or no? And really work with the school and with IT to do kind of that benefit and cost and can you, can't you, and what do you need there. As well as the school themselves with some of their budget, are there pieces that they're wanting that they would put their own funds towards in those situations.
So currently, schools do fund themselves mostly in art with Mac-based devices. So they do fund themselves for those small rooms or classes where they do need something different. We support that, but it's usually purchased on their own money.
Okay, and as a follow-up to that, then we just talked about the Futures Lab, where all 8 high schools would be going to one place. So you could potentially have 8 different devices going to one building. How does that work? Or how do you see that discussion happening?
I think that would be a conversation we'd have to enter into with Scott and Scott. On one hand, it should, unless again there are specialized needs there, the devices should work. A similar question has actually come up to us with professional development. What will it look like in a training if you have 4 different devices? That's our world. That is actually happening to us right now, just with personal devices. So I think the benefit outweighs it in that that's the world that our students are living in and will continue to live in. So how do we adapt and adjust and, change our activities? But I think specific to Futures Lab, I think that's a very important thing that we'll need to explore as both of these are going.
Great, thank you so much.
Other questions? Okay. Oh, Rob.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. One of them is that my understanding, maybe my memory is bad, but my understanding is that one of the reasons we wound up looking at this again was because we were not able to finance this program going forward, right? Or sorry, the existing program going forward. It was too expensive because the mill levy is a specific, that funds most of this, is a specific amount of dollars, and costs are going up, and there are more kids and all this stuff. So I heard you talk about, we've run a lot of stress tests on this relative to selection of devices and whatever, and so that sounds good. I assume we're meeting whatever financial objectives we needed to meet with this in terms of keeping the cost in line?
Actually, that's a great question. I think Dave's prepared to answer that.
Good.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm prepared to answer that. I'll tell you that we are knee deep in the analysis of that right now, Director Pedersen. We're like you've been heard alluded to up there. IT's done a lot of great work at creating some models to look at. We're in the process of now looking at those from a budget perspective and really kind of scrutinizing them, cutting and dicing. One of the things that is going to allow us some flexibility in this is the fact that we have a delay and that we may be able to put some of those mill levy funds that we have in one-time census until we open those buildings to maybe jumpstart this program to alleviate some of those financial concerns. One of my biggest concerns and one of my biggest hopes is that once we come out of this next purchase, we will have a very clear plan on how we're going to be refreshing going forward on a cycle. That's going to take ongoing budget commitments annually to keep our tech refresh available for all our students. If you think back to the 2010 mill levy, we had a lot in technology there, but it's a static number, and as we grow, it doesn't do as much, just like you were talking about. So we're really looking at a combination of maybe front-loading this purchase with some one-time money to jumpstart it, and then being able to add some ongoing increases that stay there annually and keep pace with what's going on with growth. That's the plan. We're not quite ready to talk about it tonight, though.
And if I could add, one of the other problems that I think I caused when I first came, we ended up buying the teacher laptops all in 1 year. And so their refresh cycle comes like all staff all at a time. And that's another one of the problems they're trying to solve as they readjust the whole plan.
We're taking on the, I wouldn't say it's an enormous effort, but it's an effort that needs some attention, where we're looking at not only the devices we're buying for our students, the devices we're buying for staff, but also we're also looking at aging front of classroom displays, things like that. And the first 2010 mill levy, I think we were all trying to figure out how is this tech refresh going to work. It was kind of a new concept. We knew some districts had done it, but not quite fully yet. We've learned a lot since then. We understand what technology is going to be around, whether it's some kind of a display or some kind of a unit. But we also have learned a lot about how long those units last, how quickly they need to be replaced, what the specs need to be. So I think we're going to come together with a much better plan because we've been working at this for a while.
So do we anticipate then, I don't know whether this is for you, Sandra, or Dave, or both, you guys coming to the board with here's the financial model that we think is going to be able to support this? Because this is a great instructional perspective, but we also need the financial perspective.
I would actually, and I think we talked about this a little bit in prep for the board meeting tonight, really was designed to be more of the instructional discussion.
That's fine. Okay.
And I would fully expect that we should be able to answer all those questions before we bring a purchase to the board and ask you to approve it.
Okay. So the second thing that I wanted to ask about has an intersection with finances, but is not, well, has an important intersection with finances, and that is the whole equity question. And I know you tried to address that, Kate, in some of what you were talking about. It strikes me, as you said, we know that some schools have more devices than other schools, and in some cases they do that from their SBB funds, and in some cases they do that from PTO fundraisers or whatever, and some schools are more able to do that than other schools, etc. And I know there's always a challenge around that. I guess I'd like, and I don't know how we would move forward with this request, but I guess I'd like over time to get some kind of a tracking on that, to really understand. You talked about indicators. You had a list of indicators. Well, an indicator I'd like to see is, I don't know whether it should be as specific as this, but just as an example, VR headsets, which schools have VR headsets and how many do they have relative to their school population, and which schools don't have them, so that we can really have a good understanding of what the equity question is across our school district, and not just, a good analytical way to look at that, I guess is what I'm asking for.
So an inventory of tools and usage. And I think with that, I would like to add in that we also have conversations about the usage, where is it being used, how, and then I think an outcome of that also would be showcasing across. Because there's oftentimes I don't know about it, so where can I go see it in action and actually talk to the students about their experience and learn from that teacher to how to use it in that way or expand upon the way that it's been using.
No question that's important. I just want to, I'm a sort of a data guy, and so I would like to have, in addition to anecdotal things about what's going on in the school, some analytical kind of things as well. So we know the numbers. And I know also that we have this library of devices that teachers are able to check out behalf of their schools. I don't know what the current advertising strategy is around that. I do know that earlier in the year that there was that not all teachers knew how to make that happen or who to contact, whatever. I don't want to get into specifics here in a public forum, but
Yeah,
just,
no, that's
just
definitely
making
fair.
sure. Yeah, just
it's-
making sure
yeah.
that
It's
folks,
definitely fair that we
folks know.
advertise,
Yeah.
advertise that it's available, as well as it also, we are seeing it, there is a need for support. So yes, we have it available. Yes, it can be sent with the support of our warehouse. But also once it gets to a school, do they know how to use it? And so that is actually something that we are taking a pretty tough look at is that it is a model that we have had. Is it meeting current needs, or can we expand or do it differently? So that, again, I don't want to say too much because we're still exploring it, but exploring, again, how can there be that resource, but maybe a checkout that may or may not come with support is not the best option for our schools right now. So what are other things that we can do to help with those tools at schools?
And just a clarification, Rob, I think I suspect that it's not your concern so much that every single school have the exact same robot, but that there is no school that doesn't have access to cool, cutting-edge stuff. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
that's exactly fair. That's fine. I'm not looking for uniformity across the schools. I'm looking for, uniformity of opportunity, or what? Yeah, you know what I mean. I mean, so, yeah, and that's a challenge. That's why I said, how many VR devices do they have is maybe not the right thing. It's maybe too specific, but it's an example. So that's something to think about.
Okay, board members, last comments, questions? Okay, thank you
You're
very
very
much
welcome. Thank
for
you.
your presentation.